Hello all, it's James Johnson, aka Sulfur Blade, and I am bringing a video to you about fracking. And this is thanks to the vice presidential debates, where evidently Kamala Harris either lied through her teeth several times, or maybe, just maybe, Harris and Biden have done a complete 180 on their bedrock stance that they're going to do away with fracking. But first, what is fracking? And what's a fracking ban? Let's go ahead and look at this informative video, shall we?
Have you heard what U.S. Democratic presidential candidates have been saying about hydraulic fracturing? Most of the frontrunners are calling for an outright ban. Inconceivably, they want to stop the practice that has made America the world leader in oil and natural gas production and has subsequently supercharged our economy, reduced global influence from Russia and the Middle East, reduced CO2 emissions, and made our air cleaner. This is a stunning declaration by these candidates. Yes, I understand their need to stoke the passions of their base by showing their great concern about climate change. But proposing that we ban fracturing, something the industry has been doing for 80 years, shows a fundamental ignorance of how we power our lives. They may think they're being inspirational, but in truth, they are being radical and irrationally harmful. These people have short memories. It wasn't that long ago that the U.S. was importing about 65% of its oil. And we were building LNG terminals so we could import natural gas from the rest of the world. Energy costs were high, and Russia and Middle Eastern nations were getting wealthier and amassing more power. Our economic and national security were entering a danger zone. Then the shale revolution took off, powered by horizontal drilling and, yes, hydraulic fracturing. What happened next was a modern miracle. America's imports of crude oil and petroleum products plunged. The same with natural gas. Import terminals were turned into export terminals. Instead of sending our dollars to mostly hostile nations, we kept our money and grew our manufacturing base. Anyone who proposes America ban hydraulic fracturing can't possibly understand what the severe and immediate consequences would be. Since nearly 90% of all new oil and natural gas wells are horizontally fractured, a ban would drive our oil and gas production down severely within several years. A 2016 report by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimated that if a ban was adopted, the price of oil and gasoline would skyrocket, quickly doubling in price. Just about everything would get more expensive, including food, medicines, cars, paint, clothing, anything made with plastic, and the list goes on and on. Electricity prices would double. The Chamber estimates living expenses would jump by $4,000 per family, nearly 15 million jobs would be lost, roughly 10% of the nation's workforce, and most of those jobs are high paying. The total impact of a ban would be so wide-ranging and severe it couldn't last long. Americans wouldn't stand for it. But we don't need to guess how banning hydraulic fracturing would destroy America's newfound energy independence. California has given us a preview. Check out the massive growth of the Golden State's foreign oil consumption. The state has some of the most restrictive and punitive drilling regulations. At the same time, California has highly aggressive policies to reduce oil demand. But oil is essential to everything we do, so the result has been to make itself dangerously dependent on foreign sources. The state is actually becoming a national security risk. If the global oil market is shaken for any reason, California is in big trouble. Politicians on...
Alright, so I will cut short this video there as I'm trying to keep the overall length of this video down. But we get the idea. Fracking's actually not really the big boogeyman that the left would have us believe it is. So let's continue on to why are we bringing this up in the first place? Well, the vice presidential debate happened, and I have several timestamps I would like you to watch, and we're going to start with this section here.
Biden and Kamala Harris want to raise taxes. They want to bury our economy under a $2 trillion Green New Deal. which you were one of the original co-sponsors of in the United States Senate. They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs all across the heartland. And Joe Biden wants to go back to the economic surrender to China, that when we took office, half of our international trade deficit was with China alone. And Joe Biden wants to repeal all of the tariffs that President Trump put into effect to fight for American jobs and American workers. Joe Biden says democracy's on the ballot. Make no mistake about it, Susan. The American economy, the American comeback is on the ballot with 4 more years of growth and opportunity, 4 more years of President Donald Trump. 2021 is going to be the biggest economic year in the history of this country.
Thank you, Vice President Pence. Senator Harris.
Well, I mean, I thought we saw enough of it in last week's debate, but I think this is supposed to be a debate based on fact and truth. And the truth and the fact is Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well, wait.
I'm speaking.
It'd be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break every single year.
Senator, that is
that's
absolutely not true. That
is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden will not end fracking. He has been very clear about that. Joe Biden is the one who...
All right. And so in the interests of trying to keep this video short, I have different timestamps where we're on the issue of fracking. We get sidetracked quite a bit here because of the way this debate is laid out. They can't have a tit for tat. They have this stupid, let's give a speech for 2 minutes and then have a short period of time to counterpoint. It's really a lame setup. I thought this debate, even though it might have brought up some substance, was actually just as bad as the last debate because it was obviously rigged against the Republicans. But anyway, I digress. Let's get past that and just get to what the video is supposed to be about, shall we? So I'm looking for the 33. Oh, that's close enough.
Pre-existing conditions for every American. But look, Senator Harris, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. You yourself said on multiple occasions when you were running for president that you would ban fracking. Joe Biden looked at a supporter in the eye and pointed and said, I guarantee that we will abolish fossil fuels. They have a $2 trillion version of the Green New Deal, Susan, that your newspaper, USA Today, said really wasn't that very different from the original Green New Deal. More taxes, more regulation, banning fracking, abolishing fossil fuel, crushing American energy, and economic surrender to China is a prescription for economic decline. President Trump and I will keep America growing. The V-shaped recovery that's underway right
All right, so we're going to cut off Mr. Pence there, and now we're going to skip ahead to 35:28, where Kamala Harris is going to try to rebut.
And Kamala Harris would put us back in the Paris Climate Accord. They'd impose the Green New Deal, which would crush American energy, would increase the energy costs of American families in their homes, and literally would crush American jobs. And President Trump and I believe that the progress that we have made in a cleaner environment has been happening precisely because we have a strong free market economy. You know, what's remarkable is the United States has reduced CO2 more than the countries that are still in the Paris Climate Accord, but we've done it through innovation, and we've done it through natural gas and fracking, which, Senator, the American people can go look at the record. I know Joe Biden says otherwise now, as you do, but the both of you repeatedly committed to abolishing fossil fuel and banning fracking. And so by creating the kind of American innovation, we're actually steering toward a stronger and better environment. With regard to
All Alright, so again, we're getting off the topic of fracking again, and now we're going to get back on it at 37:18. Here we go.
Campaign website, it describes the Green New Deal as a crucial framework. What exactly would be the stance of a Biden-Harris administration toward the Green New Deal? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. So first of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact. That is a fact. I will repeat that Joe Biden has been very clear that he thinks about growing jobs, which is why he will not increase taxes for anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year.
All right, and so that little tit for tat, those 4 segments, are most of the information that happened in this debate about fracking, where Kamala Harris desperately is trying to make the claim that they're not going to ban fracking. And Vice President Pence certainly made the case that they were. So which is it? And why is there confusion? Well, let's take a look at that, shall we? Let's start with Kamala Harris first on the topic of fracking.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yeah, and starting with what we can do on day one around public lands, right? And then there has to be legislation. But yes, and this is something I've taken on in California. I have a history of working on this issue. And to your point, we have to just acknowledge that the residual impact of fracking is enormous in terms of the impact on the health and safety of communities. Yeah, so thank you.
So you remember, our one thing I want to point out in this particular video is she comes from California. And in that video, she pointed out that she has a history of fighting fracking. And if we remember the very first video where they showed California as the test case for what goes wrong when you ban fracking, those two things kind of pair with each other. Huh. Kamala Harris does have a history of banning fracking in California. And California has been the test case to show us what terrible things go wrong when you do ban something like fracking. Now, let's get to the confusion behind our wonderful sleepy Joe Biden. And this is a great video I found online that really summarizes it up fairly well.
How he plans to bring and keep jobs here in northeastern Pennsylvania. We're losing a lot of jobs overseas. We're losing a lot of jobs from the pandemic, especially if fracking is on the chopping block. How are we going to help these displaced workers?
Well, fracking is not going to be on the chopping block, as you say. No new fracking. Fracking is not going to be on the chopping block. We are going to get rid of fossil fuels. Fracking is not going to be on the chopping block.
Well, like what about, say, stopping fracking and stopping pipe?
Would there be any place for fossil fuels, including coal and fracking, in a Biden administration?
No, we would work it out. We would make sure it's eliminated. Fracking is not going to be on the chopping block. I guarantee you, we're going to end fossil fuel, and I am not going to cooperate. No ability for the oil industry to continue to drill. Period. Ends. Number one. Fracking is not going to be on the chopping block.
3 consecutive American presidents have enjoyed stints of explosive economic growth due to a boom in oil and natural gas production. As president, would you be willing to sacrifice some of that growth, even knowing potentially that it could displace thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of blue-collar workers in the interest of transitioning to that greener economy?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Fracking.
All right, we get it. So there's a little bit of confusion on how Joe Biden stands on this issue, seeing as he says one thing and he says another repeatedly over and over and over again. But he has, on multiple occasions, as we just saw there, said he's absolutely going to ban it or get rid of it. Kamala Harris, we know, is very much in favor of getting rid of it, and already has a history of getting rid of it in California. So, I will leave the rest of this topic in the capable hands of my fellow American citizens on what they believe after watching the debate and after being filled with all of the information as laid out here. Will or will not Joe Biden ban fracking? And is it even worth risking or trusting that he's not going to, even though he said he is going to? And we already know how Kamala Harris stands on it, and we also know that Joe Biden probably won't make it through his term. So if Joe Biden does honestly mean that he's not going to ban fracking because he's done a 180 on it, has Kamala, who's already put it on the chopping block in California, do you think she really has Joe Biden's back on that issue? Or do you think the moment Joe's out of the picture, Kamala won't get rid of fracking as soon as possible? Anyway, I'm James Johnson, aka Sulfur Blade. This is my content. Hopefully you're enjoying it. If so, please leave a like and subscribe. And until the next time, all, peace.